Hello and welcome guys to another track guide and Hotlap. Today we're in the MX-5 for the fixed rookie series at Laguna Seca. So let's jump straight into it with the Hotlap and then we'll talk through the lap.
That was your fastest lap of the session.
We want to make sure we're as far over to the right hand side as possible, and we're looking for the 3 and the 2 board. My braking marker is just after the number 3 board. So just after we pass that number 3 board, but before we get to the number 2 board, I'm on the brakes. Now you want to be careful not to trigger the ABS into this corner, but you can brake quite hard, just to be careful that you don't brake too much. As you see there, about 75-80%. I like to treat this corner as a double apex going all the way down into first gear. So you want to clip the first apex, let it drift wide, and then bring it back in for the second one. So as you see here, we hit that first apex. I get a little bit of oversteer here. And as you see, I have to just loosen up the steering wheel a little bit. But I'm trying to get on the throttle just before we reach the start of this second curb. So you want to get all the braking done for that first apex, so you're getting back on throttle just before the second apex. As you see, I got a little bit of oversteer, but as long as you correct it, you're fine. And then turning back in for the corner. Here you can use this exit curb. Just be careful you don't touch too much of this gravel, because this will give you a 1x. Now, going into this next corner, you want to be as far over onto the left as you can. You want to brake just before the number 1 board, and you only brake to about 20 or 30% brake pressure, just enough to get the nose of the car turned in. So as you see here, coming up to the number 1 board, I'm just braking to at most 25% brake pressure, just enough to get the car turned in, and then immediately just a little blip with the throttle, little tap of the brake just to make sure I've got turned in, and then as soon as I know the car's going to hit that apex, avoid this red sausage curb, just aiming for the blue and white curb, then trying to get on the throttle. You can blip the throttle a little bit to get the rear to rotate if you find you're understeering and you want to save it, but obviously that can unsettle the car, so you don't want to do that unless you have to. Here I was able just to stamp on the throttle just before the apex. Now coming into this corner, this is just a lift in this car. I like to lift just before this white triangle at the end of this blue and white curbing. So as you see, I'm turning in and beginning to lift just at the start of this white triangle. Aiming for this blue and white curbing at the apex. These red sausage curbs are a good indication for the apex on a lot of these corners. Just make sure you don't hit them because they do unsettle the car. This one I hit a little bit, which is okay, but some of the ones near the first, I think it's the first 2 corners, and also after the next corner, the one that's blind, if you hit them there, it can unsettle the car a lot. But there, because we're on power quite a bit, it was alright. Now, coming into this left-hander, because the exit of this is uphill, I like to get it all the way down into second gear and get on the power as early as possible. So I'm braking at the 2 meter board. So at the 2 meter board, I'm getting on the brakes, shifting down all the way to second gear, and I come off the brakes very quickly just to try and get the car to rotate as early as possible. I'm already off the brakes before I touch the blue and white curbing, and I'm trying to get on the throttle before I even reach the apex of the corner. As you see there, really holding it tight, and that allows me to make sure I get a good run up the hill. You can take this corner in third gear if you want a bit more stability, but I find that the delta goes down as you come up the hill, so I prefer to drop it down into second gear, get on the power, and get a nice drive up the hill. Now this next corner, I hate it. This is a pain when you're trying to qualify, hot lap, or just race, because the corner is so blind. So this is how I usually take the corner. So I'm looking out for the number 2 board. As you see, the apex is about over here, which you can't see. So the number 2 board is where I'm going to lift off the throttle. I think I might have slightly tapped the brakes in this lap. You can tap the brakes if you want, but you should be able to do it with just a lift. So as you see, just after that 2 meter board, I'm lifting off the throttle, and then you're aiming for this blue and white curbing, getting as close to the sausage curb as possible without hitting it, because this is one of the sausage curbs that will understeer you quite a bit if you hit it too much or at the wrong angle. So as you see there, as soon as I know that the car has rotated and I'm not going to understeer into the gravel, I'm trying to get onto the throttle to get a good drive up this next hill. Be careful on the exit here, because it's very easy to get a 1x on this gravel. As you see there, I just used a little bit of the gravel, but if you use much more than that, it will be a 1x. Now coming into the corkscrew, I'm going to brake at the number 3 board and trying to keep the car as far to the right as possible and in a straight line. Now, as we turn in for this corner, try and keep the car as stable as possible, because it gets really unsettled coming down the corkscrew. As you see, I'm trailing off the brakes. Just before I get to that blue and white curbing, I come off the brakes and get on the power. Try and get it turned in, and as soon as I get this apex done, be careful not to get a 1x here. You want to aim basically for this tree or just to the right of it. So as you see, as soon as I come out of this corner, I straighten up, and the car is basically pointed just to the right of this tree here, because this apex is blind. So as you see, as I actually straighten up, I'm pretty much pointing straight at this tree here. And that lines us up pretty well. As you see, we've got half of our car over that white line, and our steering wheel is in line with the tree. This is a slowdown if you cut too much of the gravel here, so do be careful with the race that you don't get a slowdown here. Now coming into this left-hander, bring it over to the right as much as possible. Depending on the grip conditions, you usually just need a lift for this. Sometimes you can just give it like a 10% brake as well. Here I like to lift about halfway through the corner, so I'm full throttle, and just as we approach this curbing, I want to lift just a little bit of the throttle, little tap of the brake. Sometimes you don't even need to tap the brakes, just to get the nose pointed towards this blue and white curbing. You can use a little bit of this red sausage curb, but don't use too much because it will bump you wide. And I'm trying to get full throttle before I hit this curbing. And as you see, that allows it to drift out wide. Be careful not to drift out too wide here, because you want to bring it back over to the left. Now for this next corner, bring it all the way over to the left, and you literally need about 20 to 30% brake pressure. Just try and keep the rear of the car stable and get on that power before we get to that blue and white curbing. Again, watch this red sausage curb that you don't take too much of it, and use all the track on the exit. Coming into this final corner, the braking is between the 2 and the 1 board, especially if you're about to set up for a qualifying lap. You want to brake a little bit earlier to get on the power earlier. This can be very easy to lock up and just go straight on, so be careful with this corner. So as you see, after the 2 board, braking before we get to the 1 board, quite high brake pressure for this corner, almost about 90% there. I think I went just a little bit too high, that probably triggered the ABS. Getting turned in nice and early, trailing the brakes and getting on the power before we hit the curb. You can cut quite a bit of this red sausage curb and it seems to be quite stable as long as you're on the power when you hit it. As you see, it's only a little bump and then we get on the power on the exit. So that is it for our track guide of Laguna Seca, guys. As always, thank you very much for watching, hope you enjoyed, and see you again next time.